College football is changing, and the teams that adapt win. Tonight, we start a new series, breaking down the players shaping the future of Indiana football. A quarterback with experience, production, and something to prove. A running back built for the modern Big Ten, power, burst, and versatility. This is more than portal talk. This is roster building, identity building, program building. Tonight, we break down Josh Hoover, we break down Turbo Richards, and we break down what it means for the Hoosiers moving forward. This is Hoosier Tailgate Live, and it starts now.
Welcome in, everybody, to the Hoosier Tailgate Live here on Thursday evening. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, and tonight we got a jam-packed show as we transition into the off-season. As crazy as that sounds, after 16-0 and national championship, we're now officially in what we would call the off-season. And right now, it looks, something that's going to go pretty quick. This off season before spring ball starts up. So it should be an interesting dynamic when you think about everything involved and what's happening there at Indiana. Big junior recruiting day tomorrow. A lot of top recruits on campus, a lot of guys that have 4- and 5-star ratings, as well as Indiana has kind of opened some doors now with what they've done over 2 years under Curt Cignetti. And also tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the portal, some of the things there and things that are going to be important to all that and what we're going to look for in all this. As we get into this aspect of things, right now, there was one thing I did want to clean up from last week as we were discussing some of the situations at quarterback. I did do some research into Grant Wilson, the young man that transferred last year in from Old Dominion, and it does appear that he has one more year left. So while losing Alberto was not something that anybody wanted, everybody understands it, it does not leave Indiana in, quote, a desperate measure where they have to, scramble for another quarterback. Now, if they can find one in the portal, they will probably bring one in. But they have Grant Wilson. He's, he got acclimated to the system a year ago. And I would, do believe that Cignetti and Shanahan and Coach Whitmer, all of them have confidence in what Grant Wilson brings to the table. And so, and then, of course, what Tyler Cherry's scenario is or isn't. We don't know that as of right at this moment. There hasn't been anything discussed outwardly with everything in that respects. But want to appreciate everybody coming in tonight. Good to see you. Yes, we're in that chapter 3, as Coach Cignetti kind of put there the other night. It was good to see the Hoosier basketball upset, I guess you could say, Purdue, the number 12th ranked team in the country, with a gutty effort there, celebrating the national championship as well, as the Hoosiers get ready to kick themselves out to the West Coast for a couple games. It was a good win for that group, scrappy win. And but appreciate you guys being with us here this evening. Again, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, by all means, put it into the comment section, and we'll try to get to it as quickly as humanly possible. Also, remember, I still have a dedicated Fanatic store with just national championship apparel. So look for that link here in a little bit. I'll try to get one put in the chat, but there's still some availability there with some national championship gear if you so choose to buy some. Got some good selections there as well. But tonight, really want to get ourselves kicked off, like we said, into this new season, new chapter. First got to start in the off season as we get ourselves geared up for spring practice, as that's the most important aspect that's in front of us here. All the returnees back on campus, getting themselves prepared in the weight room and all that. They did end up hiring the strength and conditioning coach away from Colorado State, hearing all good things about that hire. We'll have to wait and see. But Indiana is full steam ahead as it pertains to their next season that's with them. Tonight, we're going to start a new series that we're going to talk about each of these portal commitments that Indiana has got here over that last month of January, I should say, this month of January. We'll start tonight by looking at Josh Hoover, quarterback from TCU, was a commit not too long ago to Indiana, opted out and decommitted and went to TCU. And we're also going to take a look at Turbo Richard, the running back from Boston College. So we'll take a look at those two, but as we go on, we'll try to introduce a couple of these guys each and every week and talk about them, look at some video if we can find it, and, see how they figure in to the roster for Indiana. Right now, I have seen different publications that have Indiana as having the number one ranked portal transfer group. But again, whether they're ranked 1 or 10, it doesn't matter in Cignetti's eyes. It's whether these guys have the production that he wants to see over any potential in that respect. So, let me get this figured out here. So, whoops, something happened there. Something about, Chandler Whitmer interviewing with the Bucks. Yeah, that's not surprising. And I would imagine if the opportunity presents to him for him to go to the pro level, I'm sure he'll go, because that's kind of where he came from. But, we'll have to wait and see whether or not that happens that way. We'll be interested if that does occur, and whether or not that brings Tino back to Indiana after he went to UCLA and that kind of debacle kind of fell apart. He's out on the market, and we'll have to see if that potentially brings that one to fruition back to Indiana. But I like Chandler. I think he added a lot to the quarterback room. I think he really helped with Mendoza and his growth, as well as others under his tutelage. So hopefully, he's here to stay for a little while and not run off too quickly. I'm sure you've been following the news with Dabo Swinney and his thing with the Ole Miss and the tampering allegations that he has levied against Ole Miss as it pertained to a linebacker that it was actually from Cal. And supposedly Dabo has the receipts as well to prove, I guess you could say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Ole Miss is engaging in illegal activities as it pertains to the tampering of people or kids in the portal that have made a decision to go to an institution or not. It's an interesting dynamic because I'm not sure there's anything in writing that speaks to the portal, that speaks to the word tampering, things of that nature. This young man in question had not signed any type of rev share or NIL aspects with Clemson, and Ole Miss kind of upped the ante, and the kid followed the money. But Clemson and Dabo's crying foul, which is understandable, but we'll have to keep a close eye on that to see if something comes of that in the near future, because it could shape some rules and things of that nature that could have severe penalties for those institutions that tamper with kids that are on a roster or kids that are just arriving on a roster. And it's something that I think every coach in the P4 has got great concern with, as well as those group of 5 schools that lose talented players that they're counting on, but they lose them because this and that. So that's another thing that you have to be pretty understanding with. Oh, let me see if I can. Whoops. I don't know why that's doing that, but we'll get it situated here. Hold on. Here we go. Coach, I think if we can get past the hard 3 games we start with in the Big Ten, things will look fine. Well, we're going to talk about that schedule here in a second, but appreciate you joining us tonight, Brian. As always, those that are first time viewers of the Hoosier Tailgate Live, we appreciate that very much. In the off season, we go once a week, every Thursday night at 7:30, and then of course when we're in season, we try to do 2 nights a week to get you prepared for everything from A to Z and trying to be the best source for Indiana football that you can find. But that thing with Clemson's going to be interesting to watch in terms of what may or may not come of it. In that respect. But as you can understand, it's a hot market for talented players. And I think I saw the other day there was over 2,000 P4 kids in the portal or something to that effect. It was just a ridiculous number. And we're going to talk a little bit too tonight about the portal when we get to it. The Big Ten schedule was released. That came about the other day. And let's see if I can I'm trying to find my schedule here. Well, maybe not. As I'm looking for it and I can't find it. Let me see if I can bring it in. As Indiana's schedule for next year is out, the Big Ten schedule, of course, is out and ready to roll, as we have seen already in that respect. Kind of got it up there on the board now. North Texas, Howard, and Western Kentucky. Those 2 group of 5 schools, I think, are a legitimate G5 power schools. I mean, North Texas was vying for the conference title, and I believe it was Conference USA. Western Kentucky's had some great teams over the years. Both those teams won 9+ last year, and then of course they're going to play Howard. And this is the scheduling aspect that Signetti has asked to be implemented, where they play 2 G5s and 1 FCS level type of institution. And unless some type of edict comes down and saying you have to play X, 1 P4 and then you can do 1 G5, we'll have to wait and see. But right now, that schedule there with the non-conference all looks well, all home games, as well as Northwestern. That's the first 4 games of the year right there at home for Indiana. And that Northwestern game, while people want to sit here and draw up W's and stuff, they had a pretty good year last year. And remember, they beat Penn State as well. And they just hired new offensive coordinator that they brought in, Chip Kelly. And Northwestern's a team that is always going to give you a game and such. Also, Rutgers then out at Rutgers. I don't know if you've seen some of the reports about Rutgers' deficit in their athletic program approaching $500 billion. I don't understand how a school can be $500 billion in the hole in their athletic department. Just crazy. But Indiana makes the trip out there, comes back, and then takes a trip to Nebraska. And you can see this gauntlet of teams here. They go at Rutgers, at Nebraska, home to Ohio State, then at Michigan, and come back home against Minnesota week 9 before they even get a bye. And then you've got USC at home, at Washington, and finish with Purdue. Um, I don't think that you can sit here and look at that and say, wow, that's an easy schedule, because by no means is anything in the Big Ten easy. You know, Minnesota was a bowl team, North Texas, Western Kentucky, all bowl teams. I think Northwestern was, Nebraska wasn't, Ohio State, of course, Michigan, Minnesota. So these are, legitimate uh, uh, schedule that Indiana has, and a gauntlet again of 3 or 4 games there that pretty much will shape what the rest of the year looks like, in terms of kind of like what Indiana to go through this year when they had to face Illinois, Iowa, and Oregon there in that 3-game gauntlet. So a good schedule for Indiana. I don't think, there's anything there that you can say, well, they did this or did that, and so forth and so on. Let's see here. Mr. Show last week, do you think we'll bring? Yeah, we're going to talk about that as well, but I do think that Indiana will still investigate the portal to see what is there and available. Although the portal is closed, is if the kid's in a portal, you still have a chance to um, sign a kid out of it if it's somebody that you want. So we'll have to see on that, but I do think that will be a possibility. Only a couple of college spots were open. Is there a possibility to sign it? I don't necessarily think that they would um, drop down to a Division II level type of player. Not to say if there's somebody out there that they thought could compete at the P4 level that they would. They did bring in the kid from Montana State, the cornerback, and he's a legit player. And again, you know, it all depends what's there and available. And if it fits a need that they feel like they have to have, then they're going to take it. I don't necessarily think because they haven't, really signed anybody, it's a pressing matter to them right now. They may wait and see what happens, because like I said, once the kid's in a portal, whether it's now or, you know, in May, they can sign a kid out of the portal. It's just that you can't transfer. But there's a way around that, as some people have found, is that all you do is withdraw from school and you become essentially a free agent to go anywhere you want. So there are some loopholes that are in the equation, but once you're in the portal, you're in it until you find a home. Some guys don't find a home, and their football career is essentially over in that respect. So, but we're going to talk about some of the portal rules and some of the things that, have been going on of late with the portal, how that is for Indiana, what's looking at. And like I said, I think Indiana's got a strong group of players coming in, and we're going to take a quick look at those this evening and see what, comes of it in that respect. But again, it's just one of those things that the portal is a vital aspect of building a team out, especially when you have specific needs. For the structure tonight, like I said, going to be easy to follow. We're going to do this in a way that, the context of looking at the guys that two tonight, Josh Hoover and Turbo Richard, talk about their statistics of where they're at, where they're from, do some film, some things that I picked out that, on each of these guys that is pretty impressive, and, get an idea with everything that these guys bring to the table and why Indiana had a interest in them, I feel, from that standpoint. As I said, as always, if you have a question, comment, by all means, Fire away. Let's see, Brian, what did you have to say here? Let's see. Josh Hoover, the quarterback we got, is good as everyone makes him sound. Yes, he is as good as everybody makes him sound. And we're going to talk why here in a second, Brian. So bear with us there on that aspect of things. But again, getting into this right now, talking about Josh Hoover and how this kind of all came kind of full circle when you think about it. Here's a guy that had previously committed to Indiana 3 seasons ago under Tom Allen, decided to back out of that commitment and ended up at TCU. I think he was looking at the systems that may be employed, and he felt what TCU had brought in at the time, Kendall Briles, was a little bit more to his liking, and that's kind of why he went to TCU and all that. I think Indiana's getting a very good, experienced quarterback. I think he's fundamentally sound in everything that he does. I think he's got a strong arm, and I think he's got excellent touch. He's going to be a little bit different from Fernando because he's only 6'2", where Fernando's 6'4", and there's a difference in that aspect of things. And he's a little bit more filled out than what Fernando was. Solid kid, but he can, he can throw it with the best of them, and then he also has the ability and the mobility to utilize his legs to escape the pocket as well as be design quarterback runs. I think you look at a couple things at quarterbacks. You look, can he run the offense here efficiently? Can he be a big time money down guy? That third down conversion that Indiana was so good at this year. And we saw it even in the national championship game, going for it in situations that you had to have a play be made, and it was made. Can a guy like Josh Hoover do the same thing? And then also, how does he handle that red zone? How does he handle that end of the field when there's pressure, when there's guys coming at him and such? All those things are things that you got to look at from A to Z when you talk about him. But we're going to look at him here with some of the statistical aspects of things. Of course, first and foremost, I always look at the PFF stuff in that regard. Overall grade from 24 to 25 dipped a little bit, but he's been in that good category of a quarterback when you talk about it when it comes to PFF in that respect. And then you look at some of the things that he has done when you talk about his 3 years in the making there as a quarterback. He's been a mid 70s to 80, 83, 84 in a rating aspect with TCU. And again, really a predominantly pass first, run second mentality under Kendall Briles, who did leave and go to South Carolina. But Hoover has been a solid player for them for the last couple of years there at TCU, and has put up good numbers in that aspect. You can see some of his numbers here in terms of throwing the ball down the field from a career standpoint. Again, he had pretty good success down the middle of the field, and especially at the 2 high zones on the boundary. Pretty good success there with catching the ball and getting it to open guys down the field. So pretty good in that respect. And you can see, again, via PFF, what he has done under situations where he's kept clean, where he has pressure, where he has blitzed, and those type of things there on PFF all look good when you say, what does he look like from the black and white of it? What does he put on paper in the aspect of things that over the last 3 years, what has he put on paper when it comes to how he's evaluated? And that goes into that production thing that Sig is very, very adamant about when he talks about these transfer players and things of that nature. You know, he's a big time guy that looks at that, you know, from that perspective. But again, he threw for over 9,000 yards over his 3 years there at TCU. And the only thing I would say that I had a question mark on him is he did throw 33 interceptions in total. That's a lot to me. Now, part of that, again, is in the system that he was in. Kendall Briles' system really forces the ball down the field a lot. So if you're gonna force the ball down the field a lot, you're gonna have situations where you're gonna get picked. What you got to do in evaluating a kid like that is you got to see if those interceptions were just a great play. Were they bonehead mistakes? That's something you can get corrected out of him. Or was it a wide receiver busted a route he's expecting to go in and he went out and so forth and so on. So that was the only red flag I saw about him over 3 years was the 33 picks. But again, you got to dive deep into that and figure out why that is, you know, because that's one thing Indiana's quarterbacks have really done well. Curtis Rourke as well as Fernando. They have really limited interceptions and turning the ball over. And it's been a huge part of why this offense at Indiana has been very, very successful in the 2 years that those two different type of quarterbacks are here. So you got to feel that inserting a Josh Hoover type into that role, they'll be able to really negate some of those decisions, maybe that were force balls or whatever, into the equation that will make him a better overall player when it comes to that situation. But like I said, he completed 65% of his passes for 3 years, 9,629 yards, 71 touchdowns. And that's a good thing. That's a lot in that respects. And then as well as the fact that, again, he had 33 interceptions. And I do think that was a question that came in here. Could I address the high number? Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a legit question to ask. But like I said, there's more to it than just the number on the page. And that's where I'm sure Sig and those that evaluated Josh felt it was not something to be overly alarmed at because they feel like in their system and offense, they try not to put the quarterback in a bad situation. When you're a team that likes to throw it first and you really like to force the football down the field, you open yourself up to having more opportunities to be picked. And that's the one thing that I think you have to evaluate coming from what Kendall Briles does in his scheme in their passing game to what Indiana likes to do in their passing game. So I think a guy like Hoover translates quite well into what Indiana does, just as did Fernando, did in coming here from Cal, where at Cal, he spent a lot of his time on his back in that respect. So again, concerned, but I do think it's something that you can really get a great hold of and help him and not put him in the situations too that makes him force issues or force throws because of forcing the ball down the field per se. So in that respect, hey, we're going to step aside. When we come back, I'm going to get the quick cut video room up and we're going to take a look at Mr. Hoover and get some of the details of some of that all right here when we return on Hoosier Tailgate Live right after this message.
Hoosier fans, listen up. This is the coach Shannon Griffith, and if you're gearing up for the game day or gearing up for the holidays, the Hoosier Tailgate storefront on Fanatics has everything you need to rep the cream and crimson in style. From official Indiana Hoosiers game day apparel, hoodies, hats, and sideline gear, to tailgating essentials and accessories, this is your one-stop shop for all things Hoosiers. And with the holidays right around the corner, it's the perfect place to grab cold weather gear, stocking stuffers, and IU gifts for the whole family. And here's the kicker. When you shop through the Hoosier Tailgate storefront, you unlock exclusive discounts across Fanatics. More Hoosier swag, better prices, and gear you won't find anywhere else. Ready to load up your cart? The link is easy to find. Just head to my Hoosier Tailgate Twitter page and hit the link in my bio. You can also find it in every YouTube description and all of our Hoosier Tailgate podcast episodes on your favorite platforms. So don't wait. Rep the Hoosiers proudly and save big. Visit the Hoosier Tailgate storefront on Fanatics today, because the best fans in the Big Ten deserve the best gear in the Big Ten.
Huddle up, football fans. Tailgate season is here, and nobody gets. You ready for game day like Academy Sports and Outdoors? Swing by your local Academy store or shop online at academy.com to find everything you need, from grills to jerseys and more. Be a watch party legend with gear from top brands like Nike and Under Armour, all at unbeatable prices every day. With 8 Academy stores across Indiana, including our Bloomington location, fun can't lose, and neither can you. Gear up today at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Welcome back to Hoosier Tailgate Live with the coach Shannon Griffith. Got the quick cut software here set and ready to go. Just trying to get some things lined up here. Going to show about 4 or 5 clips of Mr. Hoover here, and kind of show some things about him that I liked when I watched it. And hopefully we can get this all lined up and ready to go here. But again, this is a throw where you're looking at the rhythm aspect of it. 2 things I like about this here: when he hits his third step or drop, he plants and throws. And this has got great touch and great height on the ball. When you're throwing a deep ball, he does a great job of getting height so the receiver runs under it. So let's take a look at this one play here. And that's what I mean. That's just a perfectly thrown ball. It's man to man. It's, he knows right now when they go in motion, it's man to man. So he's thinking, take your best shot. He's got to hold the free, which he does. He's got to hold this guy with his eyes, which I think he does a pretty good job of. Looks at him, and then boom, that ball's up and away, and just a great, great throw there for a touchdown early on in the year. Let's see. This one here is kind of a red zone situation. Again, looking at it here, not any pressure type, still kind of a too deep look, man under too deep, kind of looking at the posturing here. He's taking care of this guy with these eyes, because this guy's sitting in there as a rat. And what he's going to do here is hold here and throw back here to this guy running the post route and a big touchdown here. See how he looked him off there, pumped one way. Watch what that does to that safety. Boom, and that's enough to open it up for a nice throw and catch there. But again, good timing, good mechanics. I love his mechanics. He's a very natural thrower. He does a lot in terms of his ball carriage and everything of that nature. Now you're going to look at a situation here. This is 3rd and 17, but here comes a pressure look to see how he handles that, knowing that he's going to have to get rid of it here. They're bringing it. He's got it protected. He stands in there. He scrambles away from it. I was able to buy some time here, and he gets the ball downfield for on big play on 3rd and 17. Now, these are the things that you got to be overly concerned, careful about when you're just making those type of plays, that you put yourself in a bind by flushing out of there too soon. But I think his overall timing in that one particularly was good, and it showed you how his composure was when things were breaking down around him. He was still able to make a play and find a receiver down the field, took a hit and made a play. That's kind of the theory there. So again, number one will remind you of what Marsh is probably going to be in that respect. Another, you got safeties low here, looking at another type of a pressure look. And again, this is no back, so he knows he's got to get rid of it quick. And so what he does is you've got essentially 4 receivers up here, and down here is a single covered receiver one-on-one, and that's what he's going to take, where the safety's cheated because of this look over here. So this is a great decision by him. Boom, he's got a guy that he's got to beat with the throw, which is this guy right here off the edge. He knows that's his guy by the protection of it all. So he has to beat him, and he's able to do that, step up, make a throw, and it turns into a big play, just a regular slant play. So that's another thing I liked about him here, was he understood the protection enough that he knew who he had to beat with the throw, and he was able to do it on a short route, quick, 3-step type of route, and he delivered it on time, and it was a big touchdown, turned into a big touchdown. Again, here's a kind of a play action type of situation for him. Again, I like the way he stands in the pocket here. Right there, he's in a great position to make any type of throw he needs to do or take off and run. You can see his shoulders are great. The ball is in a great position there where he's got it, so he's ready to make a throw. And this time he's going to take a shot down the middle of the field. And this was one who was able to throw down the middle of the field and force it in there. Here, also kind of playing that Tampa 2 type of stuff where this guy's kind of being the rat, so he's got to be aware of him. Gets a good play action fake, was able to pitch it and throw, and again, throwing it down the middle of the field, beating guys with their eyes, and being able to deliver the ball on time. I think he's got a real quick delivery. And I think in a lot of respects, that showed up in that film right there on Josh and what he brings to the table. So you can see what would excite you when you look at a kid like this and you see no problems mechanically. You see a pretty cool kid in the pocket, good overall mechanical with his work, drops, ball carriage, throwing motion, and the fact that he understands the coverage aspect of who he needs to look off or who he's got to beat on protection. And that's one thing that Fernando, I think, struggled with at times this year, understanding when teams were going to light him up, who he had to beat. And he wasn't and sometimes he took bad sacks because he wasn't a guy expecting to be free. And that's one thing when you're in those positions as a quarterback. You have to understand the pass protection rules. You have to know what each offensive lineman is doing on any situation so that if they do outnumber you, you're accountable for the guy that's going to be left alone. And I think you saw him do that in those short 4 clips of it all. And I think it speaks to his maturity and his 3 years of playing as a starter. And one of those things that he was able to show what he did. Now, he was the 4-star kid out of high school, so he was a legit kid coming out of high school. And like I said, he committed to Indiana at first, did not end up here. But again, I think Indiana has gotten themselves a solid QB that is going to be pretty good. And I think he's got the maturity. in that respect. And I like his accuracy. I do like his accuracy, especially in what Indiana likes to do with their offense, with the RPOs and things those type of things. And he does the RPOs. I've seen him do it. So he's very comfortable in that respect. So very positive look there on Josh Hoover. Now, Turbo, young man is a beast. This young man coming from, Boston College, when you look at him, again, 200 carries on the year, 1,000 yards. He's good at catching the ball out of the backfield, does very well there, 275 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns. I think in some respects, when you watch him, you're going to say he kind of reminds you a little bit of Black in terms of his size and stature and how he runs. So all that, but I think he's one of those guys that he's a multi-use. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can, yes, of course, tote the rock as well as anybody that Indiana is going to have back there, especially with what they got coming back in Martin and BB Jr. And hopefully those two that are here I know Martin's going to be ready to go. I hope BB Jr.'s in a position ready to go because he's got that breakaway speed as well. They could have a very good three horse backfield again next year with Turbo and being in there. So, when you look at Turbo, he's a back that I think he can carry the load. I don't think there's any question about that when you talk about it. He's a kid that, again, Indiana was on this kid pretty early in the matter. But let's take a look here. Some of the runs that he made. Here's kind of a counter scheme where he's forced to get it up inside, and you can see, good job of hitting the hole, being able to slide, and then finding and making the tough yards there at the end. So a good solid run, and you see that he's every bit of what he looks like in terms of what Indiana likes. Here's another good one on a counter play. Teaching it on this play, you stay behind the second puller. So he's on the hip of that tight end that's pulling there, the second guy, and he makes his cut there when he sees daylight. And next thing you know, he's kicking it to the outside, and here's a touchdown. So great field vision, has the ability to make the right reads and cuts. And that's, like I said, he kind of reminds you of Kalon Black in that respect, in terms of how he runs the ball. Here's a good look from the end zone. So he's in perfect position here to make a cut, even though the hole hasn't developed. But when it does, really good run there by the kid with what he was able to accomplish. Another big run here. Boom. And again, you talk about fundamentals and teaching of a play. He's got to stay on the hip of that guy right there. He can't be in front of him because that clouds the issue. He stays right on his hip, and then he's able to see the hole open. And next thing you know, boom, he's out the gate, and you're not going to catch him. So again, that's where he kind of, like I said, he reminds me of Black a lot. Here's another. This is an outside zone play. And again, he hits that seam, and it doesn't take him long to get himself into top speed. And I do think he has the strength and power like Kalon did, and runs hard. And that's the big thing with running backs. You got to be able to run hard. Black was the best at it. I just love the way that kid ran the football because he ran hard all the time. And this is just showing you that he's able to get it up in there and get a touchdown. He's not too small. He's able to exploit the middle, get in for the touchdown. And big time runner. Here's a little bit out of the backfield. Again, kind of catching Stanford in a all-out blitz, man coverage, and they put a linebacker on him, and that wasn't the right call. And again, you can see his speed there. He's got a little burst. But I like the fact that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So he's very versatile in what he does. And I think that's huge. Another one here where he's going to be a outlet guy, able to make a play again. So again, I think he's one of those guys that brings to the table in everything that he's shown on film and what he's shown as a running back. And again, let's see here. I missed some questions. Why their protection breakdowns are not covering a defender at the line of scrimmage when a man is right in front of the line. Okay, let me see if I can make out what you're trying to ask me here. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. It says, explain why their protection breakdowns and not covering a defender at the line of scrimmage when a man is right in front of them. Can you show me, was it one of the clips that I was showing there? That would be my question. If it was, then just tell me if it was under one of the ones there, or if that was just a question in general about Indiana. Sometimes when kids make mistakes, it's because they make mistakes. They blow circuits on who they're supposed to have and who they're not supposed to have in some respects. And, you know, that's what I said in pass pro. That's why a quarterback has to know everything in that respect with the quarterback position. Indiana will always be, they're going to be a balanced football team in that respect. Oh, well, when you have busts, when you got guys running stunts or loops or twisting a lot of times it's because the offensive line is not getting off the ball enough to let that stuff sort out so that they can switch off and pick that up. Sometimes defenses do a great job because the way they teach it is, and you watch Indiana run their stunts, they try to go right through the ear hole of the offensive lineman, especially if they're running what we call a TE stunt, where you're bringing the tackle at an angle and trying to loop the end around. So in that situation, what you want offensive linemen to do, especially when they know there's a twist coming, is try to get off the ball enough that you can sort that out. But sometimes when guys get picked off by just one guy, it leaves that guy wide open, and it's a good call by the defense. And, you know, that's one of the tough ones to pick up for O linemen is when you got those guys twisting a lot, especially if they're not getting off the ball in that respects. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know if it was a particular one or not, but look, you know, pass pro is good when you can sort the guys out and, you know, they're not bringing 6 guys. But when you get a lot of bodies up inside, especially with a lot of these zone pressures that you see and they're bluffing, it's hard sometimes for the kids to stay within their rules because they get themselves out of whack. And next thing you know, the guy that they were thinking that was going to come doesn't come. And then they've screwed the whole protection up and there's a guy stone free sacking the quarterback. So it is a situation where they'll work the entire week on those situations to get them prepped for what they're going to see in the game. And a good thing about it is Indiana's defense does a lot of that stuff, so it helps that aspect of things too. But from a quarterback's perspective, that's why they got to know in some situations who they're accountable for. If a guy comes on a blitz that he's not accounted for in the protection, so he's not sitting there looking surprised and holding on to the football and getting sacked. And that's, like I said, I thought Fernando was one of the things he's got to get better at is understanding that, or being able to check his protection and kick it another way where he can change the protection that's going into the blitz so they knows that he's protected in that respect. So those are some of the things that he's going to have to get better at, especially in the pros, because the pros, they do a lot of stuff like that where the quarterback will change those protections and stuff. With the talent in the room at wide receiver, do you envision 4 wides? Potentially, I could see that happening. I think it's going to all depend on what they do at tight end. The Brock Shot kid that's transferring from Miami is a legit player, and he's every bit of athletic that Indiana's had over the last 2 seasons. And he's a guy that, can step into that role and be a point of attack guy, but also a guy that can go out and run routes fairly well. Now, he's going to be a young pup, and he may not be ready in that respect. So in that regard, yeah, you look at it as potentially putting more 4 receivers into the mix as opposed to 3, like they've done the last 2 years. But we'll have to see what happens at the tight end position and whether or not they bring in another tight end that they can pick up out of the portal or not in that respects. So I think that was it. But no, good questions. Appreciate it. Try to answer as many of them as I can. Sometimes I can, and sometimes I'm maybe not totally true on some of that, but there's also some things there that we can do. Maybe that gives me a chance to think about some video stuff that I can do as well with our quick cut software to do those types of things. Let's see here. What do you think that Miami did that IU was maybe surprised by defensively? Yeah, the Smiths false start was brutal. That one, that could have came back and bit them really bad, because the difference from converting and getting a first down and running more time off the clock, regardless if they get 6 or not, that's the thing, So that penalty was a pretty big penalty to get at that time, which I'm sure Sig wasn't overly happy with in that respect. What was the second half? I don't necessarily think Miami really did anything overly different from what they've shown. I think, you could see that they were going to play aggressive the way they got up on the outside on the receivers. And that's where Indiana did a great job of winning those 50-50 balls and getting themselves open. Because Miami was hell-bent to play up in their face, and they challenged Indiana, and Indiana met the challenge in that respect when it came to those wideouts being able to fight off and make plays and contested throws and such. But I don't necessarily think Miami did anything overly different than what Indiana was going to see. I think it was very evident that Miami was going to hit Fernando every chance they got, as you saw in that game, some legally and some illegally, because they wanted to get under his skin and rattle him by, lighting him up. And again, that's where the officials have to be able to take that stuff and flag it. And they didn't a couple times with that. So again, but I don't think they overdid anything overly changed a lot from what I saw on film and then what I witnessed in person there in Miami. So, well, I appreciate you guys being with me again here tonight. I want to get out of here and get you going. But again, remember, if I put the link for the Fanatics National Championship store link in the chat tonight, if you want some championship gear or hat, things of that magnitude, by all means, you can get over there and get them as well. And we will continue this series as we move forward with some of these guys that coming in. Going to probably do Nick Marsh, some of maybe the wide receivers that are Indiana's got locked up coming in, as well as, transition over to defense as well, as we take a look at these portal players and how they can help Indiana moving forward. But I really do appreciate you guys as well. Thank you, RB. Appreciate you being here as always. And hopefully we can keep this rolling and be informational at that. If you can keep the questions rolling each and every week, it's better when you guys are asking the questions, because I can drill down some of that stuff and maybe get more poignant with questions that you have that answer things a lot better. But again, thanks again for being with me here again tonight. We'll be back next Thursday at 7:30 for more Hoosier Tailgate Live on thehoosier.com. For now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. We'll see you next Thursday for more Hoosier Tailgate Live.